Mr. Keeley. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Wong Hernandez. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first action item is approval of the minutes. Well, it's consent. Action item, approval of the committee agenda. We can do the consent at the same time if we get a motion to do so.
So moved.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the committee agenda and approve the minutes of May 9th. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we're getting right into our action items. Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So there's one is an action item. The investment branch is establishing an investment director position titled Director of Investment Strategy and Risk, and the position will report to the Deputy Chief Investment Officer and be responsible for ensuring the risk strategy is employed across all asset classes for the total plan and to monitor the risk framework and active risk profile for assets, in addition to other oversight functions. A more detailed description of the position's responsibility is included in the item for the committee's reference. Incentive opportunity for investment director positions is set at 75%, with quantitative and qualitative weightings varying based on the position's role. And Global Governance Advisors highlights that in their opinion letter that they provided. Staff did ask GGA to provide that opinion letter and to provide recommendations for the committee to consider in evaluating the quantitative and qualitative weightings for this position. In summary, GGA has opined that based on the position's role leaning toward more of an oversight function versus actual management of asset class performance, that the incentive be weighted more toward qualitative performance as opposed to quantitative, mainly to ensure that the role isn't compromised and to avoid any perceived conflicts of interest in this position carrying out its oversight function. Attachment 2, Comp 15, shows all incentive eligible positions incentive weightings with the positions options highlighted. Again, this is an action item. There are two options for the committee's consideration. One with the higher qualitative weighting, which is set at 45%, and the other that has the higher investment performance weighting and the qualitative portion is set at 30%. And staff is recommending that the committee adopt one of the options. Chris Ailman has joined me here in case the committee has any questions about this new investment director position. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Dana.
Chris, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of background on what the position actually does?
Well, it'll be a brand new position. It's looking forward now that RMS is a full asset class, gives us the opportunity to potentially do some reorganization because you know that Stephen's got a whole bunch of people in different units under it. I've realized that we definitely need somebody that while we take out an asset allocation decision, like right now we might want to be a little defensive, we need somebody working with each of the asset classes to make sure within the asset class they're being defensive. That would be the broad strategy part of it. The other part of the position would be, if you remember when we had the three panelists in February, Ashby Monk and Mark Weisman and then John Hausman. John Hausman from Ontario Teachers, and that's partly where I got this idea. Ontario Teachers has a director of investment strategy, but they also have Jonathan Hausman, who was a director of sort of strategic relationships. As we move forward with this collaborative, CalSTRS collaborative model, the directors want to be out there developing those strategic relationships, but I can envision where we need somebody who is making those connections with other funds, making sure they connect with our directors and just helping facilitate all of that. So this position really is going to ultimately probably end up with 3 sets of duties that overarch the whole portfolio. From my opinion, I think option 1 gives us more flexibility because I envision changing the duties as we move forward with our model and as we grow as a unit. Then it gives you the flexibility to adjust that as we go along.
Okay, we do have questions, Chris? Paul?
Thanks. So Chris, do you, between these two, do you have a recommendation?
My recommendation would be for option one, because I think it gives you a bit more flexibility as we move forward. If we change the duties, we can come back to you and adjust it.
So the more qualitative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me, but is this the first time the board has heard about this new position?
I talked about it in the past in closed session, and we just are issuing the duty statement and the RPA on the position now. It's part of our allotment of new positions for this current fiscal year.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I've always kind of wondered why. So here's a position that you've decided that you need. You've identified what the duties are. This is a person that's going to report to you. Why is it our responsibility to set compensation, to set incentive compensation criteria? Because incentive compensation criteria are specifically designed to get people to function in a certain way. And so for us to set those criteria rather than you doesn't seem to make much sense. So I've had that question all along. I think it's inconsistent with good management's approaches, but I would much rather have a certain amount of money and then have you decide how it is distributed. But as a result, in this case, I think it's a good idea to have this position. I think you've described its need and its role well. And I'd like to basically approve a formula that is consistent with your thinking about how you want this person to perform. So you're saying option one, and is option one the way you'd like it to be, or would you tweak that even from?
No, I would start, because it's a new position, I would start with option one. I think what you'll see is next year we would come back with dividing that 45% up to more clear categories rather than just now it's 50-50. I like the idea of the personal component only generally being 20%. I would like to be able to measure people more, and I think as we vet this position out, we'll have clearer measurement standards for you to be able to approve. And I understand your view of approving those. That was part of the compensation committee discussion. We call them the attachments. Your board book has a very thick section of attachments, as you said, down to, what is it, INB 15. But that's your call on whether you delegate that to Jack or keep it to the committee.
So Melissa, you want to give Paul some history on why we're taking a look at it?
So the committee did actually have an item, a delegation item that we reviewed together. And at the time, there were different components that were being considered to be delegated to the CEO, Jack. And this particular incentive criteria, at the time, some of the board members wanted to maintain that oversight. And so it wasn't delegated to the CEO. But to your point, it could be something we could discuss again. That was, I believe, in 2016, November 2016.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
professing surprise at this. I'm just professing
No,
that
absolutely.
that it's not the way I think it would be done. And for that reason, when an item like this comes to the compensation committee, I'm most interested in what, in this case, Chris has to say about it.
So Chris, I have a question for you. It seems like in your explanation of what the positions function would be doing, would be helping multiple asset classes, correct? Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Sharon?
So is it possible to, at some point, look at what Paul's talking about, look at that? I don't know what the time frame is for us to revisit those policies, but is that the delegation back to?
Yeah, we can discuss adding it to the work plan. I know that's going to be discussed tomorrow. So if it's a kind of another refresh of delegation for the CEO, we can add it there, Dana, if you'd like.
Sure.
And then to clarify,
Well, before I say sure, committee's preference? Okay with that?
Yeah.
Nobody's saying no, so we'll go forward with it. How's that?
And I just wanted to clarify, because Paul, this position reports to the deputy, right?
Right.
The new deputy CIO, okay,
It's a brand new position, there'll be open competition.
got it, okay.
Right, any,
I guess I just wanted to clarify, it doesn't report to us.
there you go.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
I got what you meant.
Righty, any further questions? Harry?
I'd like to move adoption of option 1.
Hang on just a second, Harry. Are you on the,
I'm done.
but I don't know if you're on the committee until after we do the committee things tomorrow.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Steve? Harry wasn't part of our role, correct? But I don't think he's a committee member until we do the new committees tomorrow. Hang on, we'll go back to the minutes. No, we have committee members present, so he was present as a committee member May 9th. Never mind, Harry, your order is in, your motion is in order. I'm sorry, you threw me off today with the text. So the motion is in order. All right, Sharon,
Oh, I'm done, I was just
okay.
gonna.
Jacqueline? You're good too? All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any I'm sorry.
Good afternoon.
I know it is. Abstentions, thank you. Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Exciting.
Thanks.
Chris.
Good luck, Chris.
Yeah.
All righty. Melissa?
All right, so the next
Into
item.
information items.
Yep. The next item that's being presented is an information item, and it's an update on the Investment Officer 2-3 incentive study. If you recall, in November of 2017, the committee was provided an update on its comprehensive incentive structure evaluation and options to consider moving forward. And at that time, the committee decided to hold on that comprehensive evaluation pending the outcome of the investment committee's investment business model project that was going on at the same time. The committee also decided at that time to have staff focus on the incentive program for Investment Officer 2 and 3. And so staff did leave that meeting. What we did next is we reached out to McLaughlin, the board's compensation consultant, for pay data relative to the Investment Officer 3 and 2. You have that as an attachment to the item, and they provide two pay alternatives, if you will. And the report reflects a preliminary review of current market pay for the Investment Officer 2 and 3. Also included in the item was provided a high-level summary of next steps that staff will take to move the proposal forward. We will reach out to CalHR and engage with them on this proposal. CalHR will also conduct their own salary analysis and go through their processes as well. And then, of course, meet with us and determine if it's something that will be moving forward based on their analysis as well. And if it does, DOF, Department of Finance review would be included, as well as union notification. And so this really is just an update of where we're at. And next steps for staff will be to put the proposal together and to start working with CalHR on it. And it's an information item only. If the committee wishes, what I can do at future meetings is if there's significant progress on the proposal is to provide an update to the committee at that time. Definitely do that.
I would imagine that the committee would like to be kept apprised of how that's all
Sure.
going, so please.
And I'm not sure if you saw the detail, the process can be lengthy, so if it does move forward, it can be approximately 2 years to reach an outcome. So it's not something that's going to happen right away. It is a long process, but definitely, as we hit milestones, I will come and update the committee on what those are.
Thanks, Melissa. We won't expect a report every meeting then, how's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
All righty. Any questions of Melissa on this item? All right, Chris?
I just want to give you some background, because I know there are lots of investment officers upstairs watching this very diligently. My hope is to send it over there with as you said, Department of Personnel will do their own study, but is to send them with a strong signal that we like alternative one. These are the millennials. We are recruiting and competing against all those industries in Sacramento and all around. And so to me, this is your lifeblood. This is the future of the organization. And we want to create a smooth transition. If I had my choice, we'd start the incentive all the way with IO1s that have been here a couple of years. That way, everybody's aligned in the performance of the fund. We keep it simple. And the one thing I would ask, just so you know, when we went in with the IO3s to be on an incentive, it was a surprise to the union. They're not used to incentives. And even Department of Finance and Personnel were very cautious. And they said, well, let's make it a 1 or 2 year experiment. We've now been using this for almost a decade. And we've proven it works. And the IO3s, there's such a big jump from an IO3 to an associate portfolio manager. We really think we need to push it down in the organization to be able to compete and retain talent. You're going to hear me saying that over and over again. And to be competitive in this marketplace, but also to be able to have some continuity up through all of our staff. We've taken a lot of pride in longevity, and this is a big part about keeping that. So I want you guys to be attentive to it and aware, and we will be working, and I will be obviously with
Working
my
closely with this.
deputy CEO on top of this all the time. It is our big project within our staff and their request.
All right. Sure.
And Chris, remind me, I mean, it just seems like the overall focus is, are we paying, competitively at the IO 2 and 3 level to really both bring in and retain talent? Can you remind me? So there's no incentive at the IO2 right now, but there is at IO3.
Right, 15%.
Okay, and you're looking at an incentive for the IO2 position potentially in alternative 1.
And it's hard because you don't have salary setting authority over investment officer 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
That's part of the state process.
Okay.
It's out of our hands.
So the state is involved in certain levels of our investment staff, and then the rest.
Associate
they're not.
portfolio manager and up, you have
Salary setting authority.
legislative salary setting authority, and the incentive below that, and they are
What's right below
part of the state
associate?
system. And investment officer 1, 2, and 3 are also can be part of SCIU.
Represented, they're represented.
Represented.
Okay, got it. And we didn't look at IO1 because,
I would have loved to taken it down there, but I know it's going to be a hard enough fight to get back down to the IO2. We're taking it one step at a time.
got it.
We worked with CalPERS. They're 100% behind us, but they claim they have other compensation issues they want to deal with first. And so while they support our effort, they'll watch us go forward. It's difficult because when we go to finance and personnel, the investment officer 1 and 2 and 3, there's one for STRS and there's one for PERS. The pay is identical, but they're two, in the state, they're considered two different categories. So we're trying, I've said we will take the lead and go forward and pull them along with us. Okay. Their incentive is obviously much more complex, difficult. So when it comes to the meet and confer with the union, that becomes kind of a challenge. And we've been there and have tried to get it cleared up.
And just to clarify for the committee, the pay data that you're seeing here is based on our comparator group that we use for our investment management
Correct.
staff. So it could look a little different with the CalHR salary analysis, but we will definitely use this information here to push the proposal forward.
All righty. Paul?
So the comparator group is a comparator group that we already use for investment.
Yes.
And we're looking here only at cash compensation, right? We're not trying to make an adjustment for benefits,
Correct, no.
no, so,
It's just incentive.
no, what I'm saying is we're looking at total comp, right? We're, we're looking at total cash plus incentive compensation. Are we since I would guess that a lot in the comparator group don't provide CalPERS pensions, for example, or retiree healthcare, for example. Are we making an adjustment for that when we're comparing compensation for people who work at CalSTRS with compensation for people who work at private companies that don't provide a pension fund, pension?
Can I
Yes.
answer that part of it?
Oh,
Well, I was to say, COMP, Comp 28, has your comparator group. And you can see the upper names are all mostly big public funds,
Sure.
Texas, other funds that we know where their benefits are. And then when McLaughlin looked at this, because that's been a constant question that finance has asked over time, when McLaughlin looked at it, they really found the benefits had a value, but then the private sector firms often get either bonuses or alternative equity ownership. And that tends to dwarf the value of our benefits. So it's hard to always compare across, but I know that's on our mind and that's what we're thinking about and trying to make sure that we're competitive within that. The challenge is, I have to say, for investment officers 1, 2, and 3, we're not necessarily just competing against other public funds and municipalities. We are definitely competing against the private sector, and then other careers and other jobs. You know, we have lost people to family offices, to mutual fund companies. You know, at that stage, they can easily use us as a stepping stone, because an IO2 is somebody in their mid-30s, and they can really use us, or even younger, and they can use us at times as a stepping stone to launch into other places. So it's trying to keep them and retain them. But I agree that becomes a value with PEPRA. It's a little bit different, but because as they get higher up in the organization under PEPRA, they get a harder cap that stops their pension much lower than even currently, half of what the current, I don't know how you describe us, traditional members? Classic? Like Coke, or classic Coke, there's classic and new.
Known as a classic member.
Classic and PEPRA. And then what do you call the people that have no limit? Traditionalists?
no. And
I just wanted to make one more point. We do have the cap because of PEPRA, so the salary cap for compensation, although they are eligible for pension benefits, it's much lower at 100. It's what the Social Security cap is, basically. But the other piece is that new members or all members are now paying into their retiree health care. So that's another contribution that they're making up to 3% over the next 2 years to fund retiree health care. So that is something else that is deducted.
Don't take your time, but it is interesting. I am seeing that become a negotiable issue as we're going after people, I would say 45 and up. That's where they're much more aware of retirement benefits and thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they are paying very close attention as to where they would they be a PEPRA member or not. And I think, well, now it's just, I want to know, it's going to become a big negotiating challenge, I think, going forward. But it is something I'm glad you brought it up, because it is something to factor in on these newer, younger people that get hired under the legislation. It's not as big a benefit for their future if they stay here all, say, 30 years.
And it may be because at that age, maybe people don't think that much about putting money away for retirement, but it's still a cash contribution we have to make.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it costs us, and it doesn't maybe have that much value to them, and it sort of maybe creates a little disconnect that.
I would always say, not yet. I have
Not
had
yet.
a couple of investment officers.
Not yet.
When I ask them, they say they want to stay here 40 years, so that's pretty exciting.
Very good. We would love to have them stay.
Well, I know, they were very, when we said this fund was going to run out of money at 40/40 or 2044, they were actually very worried about that. I had a hard time visualizing that time period, but.
Yeah, yeah, amen. Sandra, did you have anything else you wanted to add already? Melissa? Nope. All righty, thank you. All righty, information requests, Steve, we just had the one, now I can't even remember, it was just where we started. What did we talk about, what we wanted? There was something.
Modifying your work plan tomorrow?
Yes, modifying our work plan to take a look at the delegation, that's what it was. Thank you,
That's all, yeah.
thanks. Harry?
So, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it to be raised or tomorrow, but I think we're all aware of the fact that Mr. Idiopoulos at CalPERS has announced that he's leaving and has created a vacancy at CalPERS. They've been quite public about their intentions on what they want to do in terms of compensation for their future CIO. Much remains to be seen. I do think it would make sense for us to monitor that on three fronts, maybe more. Not that it will be actionable for us or not, but I think it's self-evident as to why we would monitor that.
Absolutely.
With 3 out of the 4 top CIOs in the country and institutions have announced their departures. We have a 15-year veteran. Three things that come to my mind that I would like to monitor more closely through our staff and through the committee, if appropriate, Madam Chair, is the final decision that they make on the entry salary for the new CIO. Secondly, at CalPERS, yeah. Second one would be the salary range that they determine. So the base, entry level, whatever that individual is paid day one. Secondly, what the range would be. And then third, the maximum potential incentive comp.
I think it's very prudent for us to do that. They're part of our comparator group. I think we absolutely have to do that.
Okay.
Any further discussion on
Could we
that?
just, I mean, could we add, is it?
The other
New
two
York
institutions?
I don't want to speak.
Do you want to just do CalPERS, or do you want to do all three
Just wanna stay at
institutions? I
CalPERS.
mean, all the
Because
vacancies.
they're kind of comparative.
As I look at the comparative group that we have that McLaughlin has provided for us, the only, the New York State and New York City are not listed on our comparative group currently. Naturally, I think of those, but, you know,
Gotcha.
Closer
connect the
attention.
dots a little bit. It's not a long, you don't have to move far,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
to move far.
Alrighty. Okay, Melissa, you good with that? Yeah. All right, anything else? Seeing none, are there any statements from the public? Seeing none, this committee is adjourned.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday evening.